Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. A good morning to those on the West and Central Time Zone. To those watching from Israel, Europe, parts abroad, we want to wish you good evening. This past week has been obviously a very powerful week. On the one hand, it was Yom HaZikaron, and literally the country, I had the blessing of being in Israel during Yom HaZikaron. The country really came to a standstill, and there isn't anyone in Israel who hasn't been affected. We spoke, obviously last week, we spoke with Major Lior Shweitzer, who for 17 years has served in the army as a casualty officer, is well now in reserve as a casualty officer for the Nachal Brigade. And there isn't one group of combat soldiers that hasn't been impacted. This past week as well, we had the tragedy where, as a function of friendly fire, we lost a number of Haredim Tzanchanim who were fighting in Jabalia and who were really uprooting the terrorist infrastructure, the Hamas infrastructure there. They were hit by a tank. So it was a very, very somber, it was a very, very heartfelt week for all of Israel and for all of the Jewish world. Today we're blessed. We have an incredible individual, incredible major in the army, Lior Shweitzer. And Lior is one of those who are the leaders of what's known as COGAT, C-O-G-A-T. COGAT is responsible for providing the Palestinian population in Judea and Samaria, the Palestinian population now in Gaza, with humanitarian aid, with food aid, with medical aid, etc. And literally each and every day, tons and tons of humanitarian aid comes into Gaza through the Keren Shalom crossing, through the Erez crossing. And we'll have a chance to hear and ask a number of questions of Lior of what it's like. Not easy, because Lior works literally under fire. Hamas is sending rockets trying to blow up, to destroy the truckloads, multiple truckloads coming each and every day through those crossings. And obviously Hamas is stealing a lot of that food from the population. But the job of Lior, as well as coordinating with the UN, with the United States, with Arab nations, it's a very complicated job. It's a job that he does literally under fire, under Hamas fire. And we want to thank Lior, who took the time to address us, to speak with us, and to engage us and give us an insight into that component of the war and that component of working with the Palestinian population. Lior, we want to hand it over to you, and we can't thank you enough for spending time with us.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me. Before we really get into the details, I'd like to give a few words on the situation actually that was before October 7, because I think it's important for people to understand how we got into this situation, or how the situation has changed. So in the last 2 years before October 7, we actually had a very positive momentum with the civil policy towards the Gaza Strip. We were working with the international community on different large-scale projects, like G4G, which was gas for Gaza, to connect and supply natural gas from Israel to the Gaza Strip and increase their energy supply. About approximately 20,000 Palestinian workers from Gaza were entering Israel to work, something that didn't happen since Hamas took over in 2006. And we also worked on a large-scale desalination plant, about $500 million project that was under implementation. And even at the beginning of the war, Hamas published a video, I don't know if you've seen, that they are digging a pipe that was meant for the project from the ground and turning it into a rocket. And so it's really to explain that Israel had a very positive and trying to improve the situation policy for Gaza, and the war was a surprise for us. It was forced on us, and now because of the situation, our focus is on the humanitarian efforts towards the Gaza Strip. And regarding the situation itself in the past few months, so during the humanitarian operation, the war has been going on, as you know, for more than more than 6 months. So this is something that we have been developing and improving over time. The first part that you can see here are a number of mechanisms that we have established and we are working on. Some of them are in the strategic level and some on the tactical level. So the first part is a humanitarian aid mechanism called the Quad meeting. It's a daily meeting that we are doing together with the UN, the US, and Egypt, going through all the aid that is been coming in on that day, seeing how it went, how the movements and the coordinations in the Gaza Strip are working, and what is the plan for tomorrow. And this is something that we are doing daily to see together how we can improve and expand the aid and see what mechanisms we can create together to really make ease the situation for the population and make the aid flow as best as we can. Another team we have is a medical response team. It's been working on mainly two things. One is the coordination and entry of medical supplies, and the second is the establishment of field hospitals, which we will also see a bit more later. But currently, we already have 6 field hospitals in the Gaza Strip, which are active and operating, and there are additional 5 that are in the process of being established. And we are working with different organizations to increase it and to also coordinate different medical staff and anything else that they need. And one more thing that another mechanism that we have is daily assessments together with the UN agencies like UNOCHA and the others and NGOs and the ICRC, and to go over a general evaluation of the situation. What are the different needs? If there is anything lacking, any specific additional coordination we need to do. How is the distribution going on? The water supply, the infrastructure, any other aspects, shelters, really to go over the different aspects of the humanitarian situation. And we have a humanitarian task force, which are experts that are monitoring the situation of the population. They go through different sources like or online reports, directly in communication with the Palestinians on the ground, with different organizations, and going over different sources to also red flag and let us know if there are any specific areas that we need to be aware about and see how we can improve. On the technical level, we have a number of mechanisms. One is the Joint Coordination Cell, where we have a COGAT representative with the Southern Command representative and representatives of the different international organizations from the field level. They're together in the same room, and they are coordinating all the sensitive sites that they have for our forces to be aware of. And second, if they have any specific movements, whether for trucks, for teams, for medical supply, any unique movements that they have, or anything that they need assistance with in an area that our forces are operating, so we are in direct communication with them. In addition to that, we have COGAT officers, which are representatives in the different operational levels. So in the brigade level, the division level, and the battalion level. And we also have COGAT officers in the humanitarian corridors, which I'll explain more later. And what their role is really to connect the operational efforts with the humanitarian efforts and make sure that the commanders on the ground are aware of the civil sensitivities and the population if there are in their areas of operation. And so this is the first part. The second part, what I would like to explain is how aid is going into Gaza. And this is also something that has developed over time. So at the beginning, we had mainly Kerem Shalom and Nitzana crossing, and the aid was coming mainly from El Arish. Today, there have been some changes, which I will talk about a bit later, with Egypt, but until a few weeks ago, in the last 2 months, there has been a lot of increase in aid coming in. So the two main entry points that we had was Kerem Shalom and Nitzana, and what we expanded was also through Allenby Bridge, coming from Jordan also to Gaza Strip, and from Ashdod Port, also coming to Gaza Strip. And recently, we also opened the northern crossing in Erez, which there are two parts, Erez West and Erez East. We opened both of them. And of course, we have the maritime route, which JLOTS is supposed to start tomorrow, hopefully. And we have aerial route, which is airdrops that we are coordinating. It's about 100 pallets every day, which is approximately the amount equivalent of 20 trucks. And it's actually important to understand that even though on scale the airdrops are not as large or as efficient as the trucks, but every time we coordinate an airdrop, we're shutting down our air defense. And it's just to really emphasize the importance we are giving to the humanitarian aid, even if it's a little, although it aggregates over time. And this is the efforts that we are making. And just to explain also, if you see number 7, it's between Kerem Shalom and Nitzana. It's called Road 10. So we fixed the road in order to enable direct movement from Nitzana to Kerem Shalom. This is when we have some trucks that are coming from Allenby Bridge and are inspected in Nitzana. So they used to have to do a back-to-back move to the Egyptian side and then come back through Kerem Shalom. So after we fixed Road 10, it accelerated the entry of aid. One more thing that I didn't mention, you see a line that connects to gate 96. This is called, it's a fence road coming from Kerem Shalom all the way up to gate 96. This is a mechanism that we started to do when the UN had issues of violent lootings inside of Gaza. So we coordinated with them convoys that move on the Israeli side of the fence, being escorted by Israeli forces and entering back in gate 96. When we opened actually the northern crossing, so it reduced the need for this option. So it's just to explain how we are always looking at the different situation and the different needs, and creating solutions together with the partners in order to make sure that we can facilitate and increase the aid that is coming into Gaza. I will also mention that because the UN stopped sending convoys from the south to the north based on the internal humanitarian corridors in the Strip, we coordinated the aid with the private sector, the Palestinian private sector, in Gaza, and bringing it up to the north in order to make sure that there is a sustainable supply. So this is just how the aid is coming in. We'll go more into detail on the different steps and the numbers. What you see here is different steps that you probably saw that was published about steps that have been decided by the Israeli cabinet in the last month or two to expand and flood Gaza with aid. Basically, with the different additional crossings and the expansion of the amounts that have been coming, we moved from an average of 200 trucks a day that have been entering the Gaza Strip, mainly from Nitzana Kerem Shalom, to around 300, 350 through Kerem Shalom, and about 100, 120 from Nitzana, where from Allenby, from the Jordanian road, we are working in two parallel paths. One is with the Jordanian armed forces, where they are bringing up to 100, usually it's a bit around 75 trucks every other day, and with international organizations like WFP and UNICEF, about 50 trucks almost every day. This is what we try to work with them and to increase the supply. I mentioned the Ashdod Port and the fence road and the road on the north. And what we did with the joint operational cell is that we added the representative of the Southern Command in order to improve the direct and fast communication with the forces on the ground. Specifically on the north, we did a number of additional steps. One is working about fueling water wells. UNICEF addressed to us that they would like to increase the water supply for the population in the north, and we coordinated with them and the Palestinian Water Authority from the PA. They gave us the locations, and we coordinated with them the entry of fuel and fueling and operating the water wells in order to increase the water supply for the population in the north. Regarding bakeries, we have been working together with WFP, the World Food Program, and the private sector. And right now, there are about 21 bakeries operating in the Gaza Strip, some of them also in the northern area. Altogether, they make about 4.5 million pita breads per day, right? So we are coordinating with them the fuel, the flour that they need, all the ingredients in order to make sure that they can operate. It's just one of the steps. And about the water, I probably have another slide here, but there are 3 water lines connected from Israel supplying to the Gaza Strip, one in the northern area, another in the area of Khan Yunis, and another in the central camps. And they are fully operational. They supply about 28 million liters of clean water every day to the Palestinian population. About the amount of aid that's been coming in, so since the beginning of the war, over 27,000 trucks of aid have entered the Gaza Strip, and less than 2%, 1.15, have been denied. Trucks that have been denied are usually because it wasn't coordinated with us. And even if there are cases where there are dual-use material, we can usually work together with the different organizations and find solutions. For example, if you bring a steel pipe, instead, let's see if you can bring a plastic. If you need a generator of a certain capacity, maybe we can bring a few that are a little smaller. So we find the creative solutions to make sure that on one hand, we address our security concerns, and on the other hand, still manage to allow the organizations to operate their humanitarian efforts. And the main point I just want to make clear from this where we are is that Israel does not limit any aid coming into Gaza. In fact, we are pushing as much as we can to increase it and to make sure that everyone has the response for whatever they need, from shelter to water to food to medical equipment and any other aspect. And this is what we have been working on since the beginning of the war. Just to give a few points specifically about the north, because there have been a lot of reports that we feel have been spreading a lot of disinformation. Since the efforts and the new steps that we took in the last month or two, there has been a real increase of aid. You can see it here in the graph on the left side of aid going directly to the north. This is with the private sector, and when we opened the areas crossing, also with the WFP and the Jordanians. So we reached a point where almost 100 trucks have been going every day just to the northern area of Gaza Strip. So we're talking about 600, 700 trucks a week, which actually to our estimate is even more or even a lot more than what the population actually needs. In our estimate, there are between 300,000 to 500,000 people in the northern area of the Gaza Strip. We estimate that they need about 30 to 40 every day, but there was a lot of pressure and a lot of discussion about the needs in the north. So we increased it, and we had discussions with the UN to send a team to assess the needs in the north, so we can be coordinated on the exact number that is needed. Because if we're sending more than what's needed to the north, then it can have a negative impact on the distribution in the south. It's just an example of what we've been doing. One more step we took, I didn't mention, is we have 2 humanitarian corridors in the Gaza Strip. One is in Salah Hadin Road, it's called, and another is in the Coastal Road. And what we did is we did the engineering work to expand the corridors specifically, so there can be simultaneous movement both to the north and south at the checkpoints in order to ease the movement for the trucks and different humanitarian convoys. These are just a few pictures showing the situation and markets and the variety of aid that is being going into Gaza. This is from the last few days, few weeks. And I'm showing these pictures not to say that everything is okay and everything is great in the Gaza Strip. It's to show two things. One is that really based on all the numbers and assessments that we have, to our understanding, there is no famine or starvation in the Gaza Strip. There are challenges, and but the aid is available and it is coming in. And we are working on to make sure that it can expand as much as possible. And if there was a famine or something like this, what we would expect to see is some kind of panic in the streets. And this is all from the Palestinian media. It's something that they are sharing. It's not something that's coming from us. And if we see that the markets are calm and they are even, purchasing it, and it's not such humanitarian aid that's being distributed, so this connects to our understanding of what's going on with the numbers. There are different challenges that we are dealing with. One of them is logistic gaps with the UN. You can see in the graph, there are numbers of trucks entering every day in white. It's crossing from Kerem Shalom crossing to the Palestinian side of the crossing in the Gaza Strip, and in blue is how much the UN is collecting. And the picture is just an example of how it looks like over time. When they collect less than what is coming in, there is a lot of aid waiting to be collected. And on average, we have been inspecting about 355 trucks a day, and they've been collecting around 183. So we really have been in a lot of discussions with them to increase their capacity and their capabilities in order to improve the distribution and the collection of aid. And just to say, it's not some kind of blame game. It's because we want to see that it's working as best as possible, and that there are no real grave needs or anything that is not getting a response. One example is that the UN, when they are collecting, they stop to work at around 4:30, and recently, because of the summer, they increased it to 6 p.m. But from our perspective, if we're in a war and a humanitarian situation, we should have 24-hour shifts, working always in the collecting, distribution, the aid. Their concern mainly is working at night from a security perspective by the UN. So that's one aspect. And another challenge, of course, is the Hamas involvement, trying to take over humanitarian aid. We have seen cases where armed people by Hamas come to trucks and divert the aid to locations that they have decided, which is an issue. And of course, the other part in the humanitarian challenge is all the exploitation of civilian infrastructure by Hamas. We've seen, of course, a number of examples, like in Shifa. A few steps that I'd like to share that we did take in order to work with the UN to increase their capabilities. One is we approved the entry of additional 135 trucks for them to use in their logistic operations. Until now, only 15 have entered. We are waiting for them to coordinate it. We approved it maybe like 2 months ago. Also, with the communication equipment, we approved a number of Iridium devices, which is the satellite phones, radio communications, which is VHF, and we're still waiting for them to bring it in. And we're approving all armored vehicles requests. Right now, we approved 32, and only 16 have come in. So it's mainly just waiting for them to coordinate it with us. Second. I mentioned earlier the medical response that our team has been working on. So what you can see here on the map in green are different field hospitals that are operating. and that we coordinated with the different organizations, including the UAE, Jordan, MSF, MedUK, ICRC, and others. And we are also working for establishing.
Lior, could you share with us what is MSF and what is ICRC?
Yeah, so ICRC is the International Red Crescent. It's an international organization. They work with us on different humanitarian aspects. They're a little different from other international organizations because they have a very close and discreet communication in their neutrality. So they also discuss with us how they view different operations by the IDF and give recommendations on how to operate. But also they are involved in humanitarian operations, like increasing the supply, especially for the health sector. So it's one of the things they've been doing, and we've been working with them on movements or evacuations of patients or entry of ambulances. And the MSF is an international NGO. What we especially have been doing with them is bringing in, with coordination by their request, additional medical staff to different health facilities, medical supplies, and establishing field hospitals. So that's a few examples of what we've been working with them. And of course, for example, you can see here with UNICEF, we coordinated large amounts of vaccinations to enter the Gaza Strip, and we also coordinated different movements for evacuation of patients out of the Gaza Strip, usually through Egypt, to different hospitals if they need a specific or special surgery or any other medical care that they need. In the infrastructure, I mentioned it earlier, but you can see where the water lines from Israel enter to the Gaza Strip. And it's not just the work that we're doing on the Israeli side, but we're coordinated with Palestinian teams in Gaza, like the pictures you can see, if they needed to fix anything, bring a specific material because of the different operations that were on the ground, to fix all the infrastructure inside Gaza, and to make sure the water reaches the population. Additional, one of the things we mentioned is to help with shelter. So since December until May, you can see that over 230,000 tents have already entered the Gaza Strip. And even the Ministry of Defense purchased 40,000 tents. About half of them already entered the Gaza Strip, and we are in coordination with different organizations for them to receive it, to notify us which areas they are preparing to receive and to build shelters for the population, and then to see together with them what else do they need. If they need some kind of clinic or some kind of medical staff nearby to make sure that there are no gaps, or that there are water wells or other availability for drinking water in their area. So these things that we are working on, and of course to have these areas in our system, in the IDF system, to make sure that there is a deconfliction and that it is safe. A few things that we are planning ahead on. One is the JLOS. Like I said, it's supposed to start tomorrow, and hopefully, I believe when it will start well, then it will bring in approximately 60 trucks equivalent of aid every day. We continue to work on the shelter areas, and I also address the current situation. And of course, to increase the logistic capacity, as I mentioned, of the international organizations. Regarding the humanitarian corridors, so we worked on the checkpoints, and the next step, we want to renovate and improve, together with the international organizations, the roads themselves in Gaza to make to ease the movement for trucks. And we're also working on a plan for strengthening the health system. We discussed this with the WHO, the World Health Organization, and other players that we're working on. to make a plan how we can continue to strengthen the different facilities, if they need specific kinds of equipment or material to get in, and we will coordinate this and work on it with them. And the next part is, of course, to speak about the current situation in Rafa. So what has been happening is, after we've seen the increase of aid that's been coming into Gaza, when we started the operation, or before we started the operation in Rafah, you can see in red, this is the first area. It's a very focused operation and not a large scale, and that we asked the population to evacuate from those areas. And we also directly coordinated with the international organizations to make sure that they are aware, that their personnel know of the specific areas, and that they have enough time to move and be out of harm's way. And if they need any supplies or material that they need to move from their facilities, so we coordinated it with them. In addition, there was another step of evacuation. You can see this also in Arabic, of an additional area in red that has been noticed for evacuation. In these two areas, the population that has moved is around it started with around 100,000, and in this additional area, I believe it's also 100,000, or let's say between 200 to 300,000. But what we've also seen in the different reports and in our estimation, that overall from the area of the operation and the nearby, around 700,000 people have moved, most of them by their own decision, because they saw the forces moving in this area. Now, when our forces entered, we were a little surprised that Egypt decided to stop the movement of aid coming in from El Arish to Kerem Shalom. And what we've been working on now in the current situation is all our crossings are open. So Kerem Shalom is open, and the areas in the north is open. And we have been working with the international community and the private sector to increase the aid that's coming in from Israel and the West Bank. So yesterday we had 248 trucks already entering the Gaza Strip. Also, the aid that came in is by the private sector, by the Jordanians, and by international community. And also today, about 243 trucks are supposed to enter. So we are increasing the aid that's coming in, and we hope that soon we will return to the numbers that were before Egypt stopped the entry of aid coming from their side. Or hopefully soon also there will be some agreement with Egypt, and the aid will continue to flow. I will say a few words on our operation there. And generally, we still have in the Gaza Strip, as you know, Israeli hostages. And in the area of Rafah, there are battalions by Hamas, and that we need to deal with from the security perspective. And in the areas that we are operating, we already found a number of tunnels and different terror infrastructure. So this is a lot of the security concerns that our forces are working on. And we are working in a completely integrated manner between the operational aspect and the humanitarian effort, in order to make sure that the civilian population continue to get what they need and the aid that needs to be delivered, and that we can still secure and bring our people back and return the security to the area for a more stable future for everyone. If there are any questions.
Yes, is this possible for you to address? Maybe we can take that off the screen. Great. If you could address for us the situation with the Hamas stealing the aid, hijacking the aid, attacking the aid. If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I'll say a few things on this. First of all, we offered the UN the IDF protection for the movement of aid. They did not agree to this because they said that it would make them not neutral. One other option we discussed with them is we know that in other conflict areas they used private security companies in the past, and they said they do not want to work with them here. And I can say that, for example, when we coordinate convoys with the private sector, they are managing to get the aid usually to the different locations. To my understanding, they are able to reach to some kind of understanding with the population in the area of their movements. And we would expect that the UN, after all the years and the experience they have in Gaza and the relationships they have with the locals, that they could reach some kind of similar understanding in order to be able to, in the end, give the humanitarian aid to the population. The challenge that we have in the different convoys, one is criminal groups that are doing the violent lootings, and the other is Hamas. So with Hamas, where our forces can operate and deal with them, we are doing it. But of course, we would not want to harm, for example, the movement of an aid convoy. So it's something that we are dealing with separately. Regarding the violent lootings of the population, and the way we see it is, as long as there is a steady flow in the entry of humanitarian aid, the interest of looting it should reduce, because in the end it's economic. They're stealing the aid and they are selling it for a high price. So if there's a lot of humanitarian aid, this issue should reduce. This is the general situation.
So your point is that since there's a surplus of aid coming in, both medical and food, they can't jack up the prices. There's just so much aid there that even if it gets stolen by criminal groups, there's still plenty more.
Yeah, as long as we manage to continue this, it should be better, at least with the issues that have been with the population. I will say that the different international organizations now need to adjust themselves to increase the aid they are bringing to Ashdod port instead of El Arish, which is actually easier for them also, not just because of cost, but because of the movements and the time it would take to get the aid into Gaza. Yeah, so
and the situation of the rocket fire, I know that it was Hamas rockets that killed 2 Israeli soldiers at Keren Shalom. Can you elaborate upon that?
Yeah, they used the mortars nearby the crossing. And what happens in that situation is that other than evacuating our soldiers, if there is danger in the area of the crossing, it needs to be closed. Also, for the security of humanitarian organizations, if they want to come to the crossing to collect aid, so we need to stop it for a certain amount of time until we make sure that it's safe. And the ones who suffer from this are, first of all, the Palestinian population. And when we know where they are coming from, then we can operate in a precise way in order to eliminate their either ammunition or the terror infrastructure that they are using. But this is, I would say, it's something that we hope that also the Palestinian population in Gaza will, we will hear their voice, and they will criticize Hamas when they are operating in this manner, because I think this is a question, even for the future of how this situation will become more stable.
We want to thank you. First of all, thank you for that PowerPoint and the very clear explanation that you gave. Look, you're operating under fire. You're providing an incredible amount of aid through multiple entries. And this is all in the context of a war that's taking place. it's not easy. I know that's very complicated. It takes a lot of coordination, and it shows you that the morality of the Israeli army, of the IDF. Kol hakavod to you, to your teams that are doing this.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any last thoughts you wanted to share with us? Because your presentation was so thorough. We're very grateful to you taking out the time to give us that presentation. Any last thoughts you want to share with us?
I think I just maybe one last sentence is to say that Israel is really doing an immense effort to make sure and facilitate the humanitarian aid and the movements of humanitarian workers and their protection. And there is a clear feeling that, the narratives and the international reports and so on are not, they don't show the objective reality. And it's really important to whoever is dealing or, trying to discuss these issues to either really go into and see the different information, objective facts that are out there, and to ask us and to be very sure that Israel is really operating in the best manner, in the best highest operational conduct that we can, in order to make sure that we work along the international humanitarian law and as our values as human beings, to make sure that our hostages return home, that there is a security in the area, and that we'll have a future neighbor that we can really create some stable future with.
The reports we're hearing are that almost, I apologize, more than half of those living in Rafa have already left. They've already moved towards the Mediterranean. They've left Rafa already.
You mean outside of Gaza?
No, they've moved to the western part of Gaza. They've left Rafa. They've gone north, and there's all types of tent cities that they're moving into with food, with medicine, with hospitals, with other forms of humanitarian aid. That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, we when we started the operation, we expanded the humanitarian zone, especially in Mawasi and Deir el-Balach and the area of the central camps. And there are facilities there, and there are shelter areas. The movement of the population was to those areas, but also still in the area of Rafah district, just west of where we entered. So it can be like Tel Sultan or the area towards the sea.
Have you seen a number of Gazans move back to the north? Initially, when the battles were in Gaza City, the population of the north went into southern Gaza. They went to Rafah. They went to other parts of southern Gaza. Are you seeing a lot of people now returning to places like Gaza City, Beit Hanun, Jabalia, these northern communities?
So, before our forces entered at the beginning of the war, there were a lot of evacuation warnings for the population to move from the north to the south. After that, all the movement was conducted, and there was about 300 to 500,000 people in the northern area, which is north of Wadi Gaza. And we had different operations that were conducted in the northern area, which have been finished for the last 3 months. We haven't been operating there, other than very precise operations. So what happened is the population that were maybe mainly in the center area of Gaza City, they moved or spread a little more in the north, but still north of Wadi Gaza, it's between 300 to 500,000 people, and there hasn't been yet movement back from the south of Wadi Gaza to the north. This is a decision that hasn't been made yet. We have forces in Wadi Gaza, and because we still have some precise operational activity in the north, there hasn't been a decision yet to coordinate movement of the population back from the south.
So the battles that took place in Jabalia this past week, these battles were Hamas coming out of the tunnels?
So actually, because we took out most of the tunnels in the previous operations, Hamas, what happens is they, because they know we're coming, they run away to a different area. We take care of the most of the terror infrastructure, or some terrorists that stayed there. And what happens is they are trying to rehabilitate their capabilities and their kind of command and control organization after we enter. So when we see they are taking these steps, and actually mostly above ground because we destroyed the tunnels, so then when we have precise intelligence that we know the area and we know who is there, then we operate. That's generally what has been going on, specifically in Jabalia.
Thank you. Major Shweitzer, we're very grateful to you, grateful to your team, and also the fact that people all over the world will have a chance to hear your briefing, to see the maps, to see the kind of food that you're providing, the kind of medical aid and other humanitarian aid that you're providing, and your coordination with organizations across the world. We're very grateful to you.
I will also just mention that in some cases we operate when we see rockets being fired, still being fired towards Israel. So then we operate specifically against those areas.
We want you to, please God, you'll be safe, you'll be secure, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
To those who are participating in this briefing, on behalf of all of us, our incredible gratitude to COGAT, COGAT, that's the branch of the IDF that oversees and provides for the Gazan population, provides for the population in Judea and Samaria as well. And we will be back with our next briefing. We want to thank you for participating in this briefing. And the recording should go out in about 4 to 5 hours. Those who did not have a chance to hear it, they should be receiving an email in 4 to 5 hours. Thank you very much, and wishing everyone a Shavua Tov, a very good week, a meaningful week.